Hello. This is Antje from Byte Shuffle. Thank you for always watching our videos. This time, I put together an overview of how to approach the ad nauseam Tendrils ANT matchup when playing Doomsday, including sideboarding strategies. There's also a link to the pile breakdown video in the description, so feel free to check it out. Here is the deck list we will be using this time. I'll keep this hand since it looks like I can smooth it out with draw spells. I'm digging for land, stacked Personal Tutor, Doomsday, and a dual land, then drew into the top card. The Surveil effect sends it to the graveyard. The Surveil effect sends it to the graveyard. Using discard to scout ahead. Up to this point, seeing Veil of Summer made me suspicious, but after spotting the One Ring, I assumed my opponent was on BUG Doomsday. I'm digging for disruption. Stacked Thassa's Oracle and Ponder, in that order. Since I didn't hit it, I'll go for the combo in two parts from here. In the end, I cast Brainstorm at the end of their turn. I should have cast Brainstorm in response to the One Ring, then decided whether to let it resolve based on the cards I saw. I have two pile openers in hand. I'm debating whether to end the game this turn with Lion's Eye Diamond and Thassa's Oracle, or to play it safe by stacking Force of Will on top of the library to avoid losing, then go for the win next turn. Since I believe my opponent is on Doomsday, I don't think they have any counters in hand, but I chose the safer line and went with the latter option. I built the pile in the order of Thassa's Oracle, Cavern of Souls, Edge of Autumn, Street Wraith, Force of Will. I completely misread my opponent's archetype. The adventure ends here. Before sideboarding, I'd like to review the list we used. First, the conclusion. I will explain it step by step. These are the cards in ANT that can affect Doomsday. First, depending on the opponent's build, it's Silence. If Silence is cast when our pile is empty, we lose to a library out. When you want to play around Silence, it's crucial to go off a beat earlier using Thassa's Oracle. Next are hand disruption spells like Duress and Thoughtseize, and counter spells like Consign to Memory and Flusterstorm. Additionally, in response to Veil of Summer or Silence, I respond with Flusterstorm and Duress. I also include Consign to Memory and Force of Negation to disrupt the opponent's combo. I also add Tormod's Crypt for additional graveyard hate. This allows us to shut down graveyard-based lines involving Past in Flames or Gia's Will. In exchange, I cut Edge of Autumn. This is because it's a matchup where life totals don't matter, making it the least impactful cycler. Next, I cut Cavern of Souls. This is because the opponent typically doesn't rely on counterspells. I also cut Cabal Ritual and Lotus Petal. Since both players are trading hand disruption spells, the game tends to slow down for both sides. I removed these cards because, in this context, it's more valuable to play out lands than to rely on mana acceleration that only adds a single mana. Next, I cut Unearth. This is because the opponent often doesn't run Disruptor Flute, and I'm not relying on a creature-based plan either. I also cut Consider. This is because the opponent typically doesn't run Orcish Bowmasters, and among our draw spells, Consider is the least impactful. Next, regarding Boseiju, who endures. It can destroy non-basic lands or mana artifacts, which means I might end up losing after assembling our pile due to insufficient mana. Although it's a rare case, if you have the flexibility, it's better to build a pile that plays around it. Lastly, let's wrap up by reviewing a major weakness of ANT. Since the opponent's disruption often consists of hand discard and Veil of Summer, ANT has a structural flaw. it lacks the ability to interact with cards placed on top of the library. Next, I'll explain this with a specific example. Let's say I have a cycler or a draw spell in hand. I cast Doomsday off Dark Ritual and assembled our pile. At this point, the Doomsday player can choose between an aggressive pile that aims to win immediately, or a defensive pile that plays more cautiously. This time, I'll take a look at an example of a defensive pile. This is when you have just one counterspell in hand, which feels unreliable, and you're short on pile openers, so you're forced to pass the turn. The counterspell you place on top of the library may vary depending on your available mana and blue card count in hand, but let's say we built the pile like this for this example. On the turn following our combo setup, the opponent casts Duress and strips all the counterspells from our hand. After that, they build up Storm. And when the opponent casts Tendrils of Agony, we use Street Wraith in hand to draw the top card of the pile, consign to memory, and counter the Tendrils of Agony trigger. By doing this, it becomes extremely difficult for the opponent to respond effectively. This is one example of a defensive pile. I keep the hand because, after using Hand Disruption on turn 1 to check the situation, it looks like I can go all in. I'm going all in. From here, I increase my mana to enable the combo. With our mana ramped up, I proceed to scout ahead. I took out Lion's Eye Diamond. When ANT goes for a fast win on turn 1, Lion's Eye Diamond is often crucial, so I took it out to avoid dying on the spot. I don't have mana yet, so securing that is our first priority, but we also want to minimize the number of turns I pass, if possible. Since the opponent has no draw spells, I accept the risk of them top-decking Consign to Memory or Boseiju Who Endures. I play Lion's Eye Diamond to the battlefield, then set up a pile so that drawing the next card will immediately let us win the game. I include Lion's Eye Diamond and Thassa's Oracle in the pile, filling in the gaps with Street Wraith to smooth the sequence. I couldn't think of a strong last card, so I picked one at random, but in hindsight, it would have been better to include a draw spell. The pile was built in this order: Consign to Memory, Thassa's Oracle, Street Wraith, Lion's Eye Diamond. To play around the opponent's discard, I preemptively deploy Lion's Eye Diamond. I activate Lion's Eye Diamond in response to the pile opener going on the stack. We win the game with Thassa's Oracle. I keep the hand because it looks like we can withstand the opponent's aggressive plays. The effect of Surveil leaves the card on top of the library. The Surveil effect sends it to the graveyard. I'm digging for land. I stacked Lion's Eye Diamond and placed Ponder on top of it. Using discard to scout ahead. I took out Lion's Eye Diamond. I'm going all in. From here, I increase my mana to enable the combo. I thought the main way I'd lose was to Tendrils of Agony from the opponent's hand with a low storm count. But that doesn't seem to be the case this time. There's still a chance I could lose if the opponent top decks Consign to Memory on their next turn and it gets duplicated. That's why, if I can add either Flusterstorm or a discard spell to my hand, I think I'll be safe from losing. I include Night's Whisper in the pile, since it can draw both a land and Flusterstorm at once while also reducing the total number of cards needed in the pile. Since the opponent might use mana acceleration to dodge Flusterstorm, I included 2 copies of Thassa's Oracle in the pile. I built the pile in the following order: Thassa's Oracle, Flusterstorm, dual land, Night's Whisper. I use Night's Whisper to draw through the pile. I pass the turn with Flusterstorm and Consign to Memory at the ready. Since the only card in the opponent's hand is Infernal Tutor, I counter it with Flusterstorm. I counter it with Force of Negation. I win the game with Thassa's Oracle. Lastly, I have an announcement. I'm posting the concepts behind the images used in my videos, as well as small flavor-inspired stories, in the YouTube community section. Additionally, I'm selling merch for the channel through the link in the description. If you're interested, be sure to check it out. Thank you for watching up to this point. I apologize for the many play mistakes. I hope to improve at MTG together with everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and giving it a thumbs up. See you next time. This is Antya.